Ashvino. Mandalam 1, Suktam 22A. Rishi, Medhatithi Kanva, Devata, Ashvino, Savitr, Agni. Chandas, Gayatri. Mandalam 1, Suktam 22, Rik 1.
Do awaken, Ashwin twins, yoked at dawn. Let them come here, verily, for drinking this soma. Climbing the ladder to supreme consciousness, one rung at a time. To be able to accomplish the system impersonation described in the last verse of the previous suktam in good time and convincingly as well, one needs to have both a good memory along with a quick recall ability as well as the power of discernment to use the memorized knowledge wisely. Figuratively, one needs illumination of knowledge to fulfill both these requirements. Ashvini Kumaras, the twin sons of the sun and Sangya, representing light and understanding, yoked together, become the ideal divinities to seek grace from for the system impersonation or being conscious endeavor at the dawn of its advent. The exercise of seeking grace is essentially a drill to instill positivity in our thought, to provide it with the necessary momentum to accomplish the task at hand. The feeling of, yes, I can do it, with the implied caveat, with the blessings of the invoked divinity, to ensure that the tendency of the ego to self-promote does not dilute the imbued resolve. Every invocation of divinities can be seen in this light. Vedic practices and rituals are well thought out strategies to guide mortals to attain the blissful state of consciousness in whichever field of activity that suits their mortal traits. The seeker climbing the ladder to supreme consciousness one rung at a time, where the conscious level increases by a notch after each graduation. Every attempt at spanning a rung need not be successful, and there is absolutely no bar on the number of attempts. The benevolent divinities are ever eager and inclined to help their mortal wards. Time, too, is no constraint. If it doesn't happen in this cycle of birth, there is always another one to follow. After all, what meaning has time in eternity?
Mandalam 1, Suktam 22, Rik 2.
Those two who are good charioted, the foremost among charioteers, both gods touching heaven, Ashvin twins, these two we call. Sunlight, the closest physical representation of grace. If knowledge is a good chariot, it also requires a good charioteer, wisdom, to drive it, to derive proper utility from it. If the charioteer is the foremost among those of his ilk, utilization of the vehicle will be at its best. As sunlight traverses our part of space or heaven, on its relatively short journey spanning 8 minutes and 20 seconds to our abode, it can said to be touching heaven before reaching earth. The closest physical representation of grace is sunlight. The fact that we are alive is indeed attributable to this abundant grace that is granted with or without invocation to all mortals in adequate measure. Considering the fact that grace is granted without being asked, the onus is upon us to make best use of it within the ambit of our capabilities, to attempt to excel in our respective areas of interest by transforming knowledge and wisdom to be fully conscious of our pursuit, to live it, not in a competitive spirit, but in absoluteness. Grading our achievement against those of others defeats the purpose. Our achievement is unique and like no other, just as everyone else's is, and reveling in it and in those of others is a facet of the mentioned absoluteness. This notion is possibly the basis of the adage which asserts that all paths lead to the Supreme, and they do indeed. The yardstick to measure any achievement is not the result alone. It is principally the experience of every moment lived. While, as we progress towards its intended point of completion, the completion itself being just a corollary, only another point among the multitude of others that marked the effort.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 22, Rik 3.
Those that are like pleasantly sweet whips, both of you, Ashvin twins, like truth personified, with it do be situated in the sacrifice. Sunlight and its wondrous expressions. Though light is looked upon as grace from divinities, it is also a tough taskmaster. Light is very exacting in its approach to the execution of its directives. It always makes the sky appear blue, given the current composition of elements and molecules in it, by scattering blue light much more than the other color components of white sunlight. It always makes chlorophyll to absorb energy from sunlight and convert carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to carbohydrates. Exposure to sunlight causes dehydrocholesterol in human skin and ergosterol in sea-resident phytoplankton, among many other life forms, to absorb ultraviolet B radiation from sunlight to produce vitamin D that is essential for life forms. Considering the example of phytoplankton, sunlight or the Ashvini Kumaras representing it have been a part of this process for the past 500 million Earth years at least. Many, many more are the life processes influenced by the Ashvin twins in similarly exacting, meticulous and invariable manner. Grace is granted in abundance, but it is also demanding on the position that it be used only for its intended purpose and in full measure. About 30% of the incoming sunlight is reflected back into space by cloud particles, snow, and ice. The rest is absorbed by land, oceans, air, and life forms. Even the light reflected back into space must certainly have some utility for the Earth's system. One that immediately comes to mind is the view of Earth from space. It must appear as it does only because of the 30% reflection of sunlight. It is for this preciseness of its expression, which is mentioned as sweet whips, that the Ashvini Kumaras are celebrated as truth personified.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 22, Rik 4.
नहि वामस्ति दूरके यत्रारथेन गच्छतः अश्विना सोमिनो गृहम्.
Habitation of Soma offerer is certainly not at a distance for both of you, where, Ashwin twins, you both go by chariot. The Ashvin twins and the Earth system. As has been mentioned in the descriptions of hymns up to now, a sacrifice with Soma offering and invocations is synonymous with any activity performed by any entity, animate or inanimate, with the offering and invocations being expressed differently according to the situation, purpose, and the performer of the activity. Every doer is associated with an environment that it calls its own, its habitation. Sunlight reaches every nook and corner of the earth's surface, directly or indirectly, in the form of heat derived from it, allegorically described as the Ashvini Kumaras arriving in their chariot. No activity is conceivable without energy, and most activities on earth are inconceivable without energy provided by sunlight. Putting the above two axioms together, we obtain the equivalence of the literal translation of this verse. A good example of the indirect manner that sunlight is used for the benefit of life forms on earth is the heating of the earth. Upon being heated, the earth radiates energy at wavelengths much longer than that of sunlight and so invisible to human eyes. Part of this radiated heat is trapped by greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, heating it. That makes the average surface temperature hospitable to life forms as we know them. The Ashwin twins, in the form of sunlight, indeed make this interdependent system that we reside in so vibrant, lively, and enjoyable.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 22, Rik 5.
हिरण्यपाणि भूतये सवितारमुपह्वये सनेता देवता पदम्.
I call near golden-handed sun for assistance. He will awaken divine region. Sunlight from the past. It is logical to assume that as the sun has a golden hue, it should also have a golden hand when personified to provide assistance with, and assistance it does provide in many ways, including determining the direction of evolution. Everything on earth, living or dead, but not
completely
decomposed, is a reservoir of stored solar energy, though in modified forms. A seed grows up to be a plant by transforming solar energy through photosynthesis to form branches, leaves, flowers, and fruits. When we ingest vegetables, seeds, or fruits, we consume stored solar energy. So also it is with meat. Fossil fuels are remnants of plant and animal matter stored under Earth's surface for millions of years. What drives our vehicles and cooks our food is actually sunlight from the distant past. Sunlight, then, can be viewed as a currency of all transactions between everything on earth. If this isn't grace bestowed by the golden-handed sun, then what is? It may be argued that it is only after the advent of contemporary science and the development and availability of probing and measuring tools that these processes have been understood, and so the Rigvedic composers could not have known about all this. However, Yoga Sutras mention siddhis or abilities and the manner to achieve them, to be able to hear, perceive, and understand all natural processes. Perhaps these truths, as Vedic thought refers to the edicts of science, were known long back through yogic practices that led to the inspired composition of hymns such as these. If light causes anything in slumber to awaken, then the sun certainly awakens the divine region, space, around it, across great distances, as it travels with its retinue of planets, asteroids, and comets around the galactic center once in 230 million years.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 22, Rik 6.
अपान्नपादमवशेषविकारमुपस्तुहि तस्य व्रतान्युष्मसि.
For protection, we do acknowledge towards Son of Waters, Sun. We desire his rule-based deeds. Sun, the Son of Waters. Consider the following axioms. A. Truth is something that is unalterable given a situation. B. The laws of science are truths. C. The deeds of an entity that is born of truth, meaning science, and lives truth, meaning science, should also be entirely rule-based, meaning scientific. The third axiom is a derivative of the first two. Now, let us translate these axioms into contemporary parlance of science. A. The progressive fusion of elements starting from hydrogen and going up the table of elements provides the energy to make the sun what it is. B. The life cycle of a star, the sun being one, is entirely predictable by the laws of science. C. Since the state of the sun is foreseeable, its influence upon other entities of the solar system should be rule-based and foreseeable as well. A peek into the past, prior to the birth of the sun, reveals a vast, diffused hydrogen cloud coalescing under the influence of gravity, the consolidation creating conditions to start the process of fusion reaction. In Vedic parlance, any fluid in motion is referred to as waters. Considering the inward consolidation of the hydrogen cloud as waters, the sun can be described as being born of waters and hence its sun. That is sun, the sun for you. It is only from a powerful and predictable entity that one seeks help, being certain of what to expect. The sun satisfies both the defining criteria. If the literal translation of the Sanskritam verse is viewed in the backdrop of the explanation above, it can be seen to be entirely true and composed with conviction, being aware of the factors involved.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 22, Rik 7.
भक्तारम् हवामहे वसोश्चित्रस्य राधसः सविकारम् पृचक्षसम्.
We call sun referred to as Savitr, the distributor of substantial reason, of wealth, of bliss, guider of mortals. Sun, the embodiment of truth. As in the previous verse, this one too can be explained on the basis of the same three axioms considered. As a noun, reason is the cause, explanation, or justification for an action or event, which is the same as knowledge. The sun distributes light, which is both a particle and a wave. A particle is a substance, and the reason of why it exhibits a dual nature is inherent in its expressions. As a wave, it is no substance but an abstract, yet reasonable entity. Substances, including particles, have mass and hence affected by gravity. But photons, particles of light, are massless, yet have momentum and are affected by gravity as well. This strange behavior of light or of any electromagnetic radiation makes it reason or justification itself for being so. Therefore, saying that light is knowledge or truth will not be a mistake. The sun, then, is the distributor of a substance, which is a reason for and in itself, and so is materialized knowledge. Being the originator of knowledge and truth, the sun is embodied knowledge and truth that guides mortals in negotiating life. Truth has this innate disposition of bestowing bliss. And lo, the three axioms have endorsed this verse as well,
Like they did
the previous. These expressions of truth beautifully blend the three perceived regions of the material, the mental, and the mystical into one smooth and seamless expanse, where the supposed transition from one level to another, climbing up the ladder of consciousness, happens according to requirement without the transitioner being aware of it, and is a blissful experience. All prescribed Vedic practices have been devised with this notion in mind. The widely practiced exercise of Surya Namaskar is an example of such a conception. The word root Savitra translates to that which generates, produces, or yields. The sun does all this in the context of truth and is surely worthy of veneration.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 22, Rik 8.
सखायानिषीदत सवितास्तोम्यो नृणाः दाताराधांसि शुम्भति.
Friends, do sit down verily. Now, sun, the praiseworthy, the giver, shines riches for us. Earthonomics and the sun. The three-axiom scheme applied in the description of the two previous verses is applied yet again here, together with the inferred notion that the sun represents truth and light, which is its currency or medium of exchanging truth. In the earlier two verses, we have explored the sun's characteristics in the context of the material processes that make it what it is and its psychological ramifications. Here, we extend the import of the truth that it represents upon that aspect of life that predominates thought in contemporary living, economics, which is the study of the interaction of people with value. Truth has this innate property of being economical. It can be seen in the design of every object of nature, which ensures optimal functionality with minimum expenditure of energy. Being born of truth, mortals instinctively recognize the import of this requirement, for infidelity to this norm enhances the probability of mortality. The
rationale
of divinity precludes gods from ever being infidels. Economics has been at play on earth from the time it came into being. The primary resource of natural earthenomics is sunlight and its cyclical, annual, as well as longer periodic variability. The other resource limitation is the surface area of the earth. Evolution and sustenance of life is managed and manipulated by using natural laws towards establishing ephemeral permanence and gradual change that makes living a relatively peaceful and pleasant affair. The sun, as the primary resource provider for earthenomics, plays a prominent role in it.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 22, Rik 9.
अग्ने पत्नीरिहावह देवानामुषतीरुप वष्टारं सोमादीतये.
Agni, do bring verily here the modest wives of the gods and the architect of gods, Twashta, near for Soma drinking. The truth about truth. It is now the turn to acknowledge forces behind the primary divinities like Indra, Agni, Savitr, etc., that make them what they are and impel them to do what they do. The feminine divinities or variants of Shakti, as they are referred to in Sanskritam. The logic behind gender bestowal appears to be as follows. The unmanifest Supreme, Brahman, is attributeless and so genderless. The manifest Supreme, Purusha, is masculine and all its expressions, Prakriti, are feminine. As all expressions of natural laws shaped by forces associated with masculine divinities follow the maxim of economy and non-redundancy, there is simplicity, moderation, and dignity in their articulations, traits that are collectively referred to as modesty. The next in line for acknowledgement is that divine intermediary, Tvashta, who is contracted for overseeing and execution of works that have been conceptualized and designed by masculine divinities and their respective feminine consorts. This hierarchy is formulated from a human viewpoint. Truth can only be truth, genderless and unbiased, whether it is visualized as Indra, Agni, Savitr, the variants of Shakti, or the contractor, civil engineer, architect combined, Tvashta. Hierarchy is a necessity in the realm of duality, inhabited by mortals and going by the axiom that truth can only beget truth. The mortal need for hierarchies to help understand truth must also be the truth. It is often said that consciousness is beyond logic and reason. But it appears that these two are the crutches that help us to reach the beyond and become instrumental in being rid of them too.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 22, Rik 10.
आत्मा अग्निजिहावसे होत्राञ्जविष्टभारतीम् वरोत्रीम् धिषणाम् वः
Agni, most young, do carry here for our protection the feminine divinities, priest who calls the gods, eloquent, protector, understanding. Engendered gender. The bell curve is apparently a universally applicable measure to visualize and describe the prevalence and distribution of variance of a notion. The curve could manifest in various forms: fat, lean, tall, short, skewed one way or the other, or a combination of these shapes, depending on the notion being probed, the conditions applicable, and the time of probing. If one were to draw a bell curve to describe
The average of
the variational bell curves mentioned, it must come up with an expression that provides the most likely shape of a curve that could nearly fit all distributions. That isn't too tall or too short, neither too fat nor too lean, nor too skewed. That yet shows that there is a dominant mainstream with variants that progressively taper off on either side of the mainstream towards functionally attenuated extreme positions. This too must be a reflection of truth. The role and visualization of gender of divinities and its variations is one such notion that may exactly fit this averaged bell curve. Most humans who are reasonably agreeable to the conceptualization of divinities attach little significance to gender
division
and give them equal importance. Mainstream Vedic thought is such. It is also a manifestation of the truth that there are sections of the human population who take their gender too seriously and propitiate only masculine or feminine deities to the exclusion of the other. Of course, all paths lead to consciousness, and upon its attainment, distinctions vanish.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 22, Rik 11.
अभिना देवीरवदा महस्सर्वणा नृपत्नीः अच्छिन्नवत्रासजन्ताम्
Great feminine divinities, wives of gods, having uncurtailed wings, do be associated to us with protection, with prosperous happiness. Aesthetics and flights of fancy. Gender distinctions of divinities have this strange and opposing affinities towards what they represent and what they express. Conceptual abstractions are represented by male gods and their manifestation in reality by their female counterparts. Male gods are definite and purposeful in their expression. They ride chariots or horses to a definite destination to destroy a demon who disturbs equilibrium, or send forth a precise measure of light each day for a specified duration and purpose. Female goddesses, on the other hand, prefer aesthetics. abstract flights of fancy with functionality, real and focused action. This manner of assignment of representation is perhaps a projection of mortal traits upon divinities, moderated by the correctly recognized need to provide equal salience and balance to both distinctions. The flights of fancy of goddesses is what makes reality so beautiful, transforms a house into a home, a body of individuals into a family, and living life a pleasure. This perhaps is the meaning of the phrase having uncurtailed wings used in the verse, and also the notion that made mortals conceptualize fairies. Every aspect of life must have been explored in detail by, or maybe revealed to, the seers before composing Vedic hymns. There are offshoots of Vedic philosophy like the Shakta worship variant, where the manifest supreme is feminine. Evidently,
The hierarchical role assignments to divinities
would be a little different from that of the parent philosophy. But as long as truth is revealed in its
pristine glory. Does it matter who plays the superior and who the subordinate?
it certainly should not.